Job security has been quite good, and the number of jobs, in fact, has increased. Despite that unemployment rate going up, job numbers are now 4% higher than they were a year earlier. We've got a migration boom underway, so I think more and more people are getting aware of this one and the obvious offset it provides with all the foreigners coming in to the net loss of Kiwis the past year of about 35,000. Hello again everybody, and welcome to another video of myself along with NZHL, where I'm having a look at generally what's happening in the New Zealand economy, housing market, interest rates, basically the sort of thing which average Kiwis, especially homeowners and prospective home buyers, might be interested in. Now, ahead of each of these videos, these special ones, Tea with Tony, we do every month, I'm usually given a wee bit of a list of things maybe I would want to talk about, and I never go through the complete list, but there was something in there this time around regarding the Kiwi dollar. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kiwi dollar, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening with non-performing loans for the banks out there, because there have been one or two articles noting that there's some stress out there, and then I'll dive wholesale into the housing market and what's happening there, because things definitely are starting to gather a bit of momentum. So for the Kiwi dollar, personally, I haven't actually written or spoken about this to any great degree for an extended period of time. During the pandemic, of course, things were just simply all over the place with regard to asset prices and currencies and interest rates. And with all the attention we were paying on the housing market, the currency sort of got pushed to the side. Well, here we sit at the moment with the Kiwi dollar just above 59 US cents. About a year ago, it was 61.5, and the average for the past 10 years has been 70 cents. So frankly, the purest thing you could say about the Kiwi dollar, and really not much more at the moment, is that we are travelling along at below average levels, which is perhaps a bit surprising for those of you out there who have lived through previous monetary policy tightening cycles in New Zealand, where what usually happens is the Reserve Bank raises interest rates, the currency goes up a little bit, we don't really care about anything in the cities. In fact, we feel happier because overseas travel is getting cheaper, the inflation's still a problem, interest rates go higher and higher, currency goes up, the farmers go into a recession, and eventually we feel something in the cities, and eventually things go back the other way. Well, of course, this time around, at the same time as interest rates have gone up very rapidly in New Zealand, they have gone up equally, in fact, in some instances, more rapidly in other economies, Australia, United States, UK, Europe, etc. So we haven't had any sort of dose of interest rate differential favouring the Kiwi dollar, investors pouring their money into our country this time around. Now, most recently, of course, we've got this extra downward pressure. The newspapers were highlighting a few days ago that about a month or so ago, we were 63.5 against the US currency versus, like I say, the 59.5 or so at the moment. Now, what's happened most recently is that the outlook for China's economy has deteriorated. It can be difficult for investors around the world to take a position in an asset on China going up or China going down. But the Kiwi and the Aussie dollars are considered proxies for what is happening in the Chinese economy, given that 1/3 of our export receipts come from China. For Australia, it's 45% or so. Therefore, if China suffers, one would normally expect the Australian and New Zealand economies to suffer, and so our currencies get sold in that regard. And it's worth noting then that we sit at the moment against the Aussie dollar around about 92.3 cents, which is exactly smack bang on the average for the past 10 years. So we're below average against the greenback, the yen, the euro, the British pound, but not against the Aussie dollar. And the big thing in play, as I say, for the moment is China. And what that means is if the outlook for China deteriorates somewhat further in the next few months, and that's very uncertain, you could reasonably expect the Kiwi dollar would go down. But just be aware the Chinese authorities have a big ability to re-inject liquidity into their economy to boost the rate of growth. And if if you're thinking, oh, he said the currency's going down, okay, let's sell the Kiwi dollars, take our money overseas to a different currency for a while and come back in when it's cheaper. Yeah, well, at some stage the currency could easily turn on a dime when the view on China could easily change in a 24 or 12-hour period. So just be careful. I can safely say from 3.5 decades in this business, we cannot forecast exchange rates. Good luck if you're going to have a go at it. Now, another thing I've been asked to have a look at is some of the media reports recently about non-performing loans. We've seen some discussion about people getting into difficulties, continuing to service their mortgage. It's the sort of thing we've seen of relatively high magnitude in the past in New Zealand. Obviously a very bad situation. And we can put some of the difficulties being seen at the moment down, of course, to the interest rates increasing relatively quickly and some people simply being caught out. But to put it in perspective, we can go to the Reserve Bank's website and have a look at the data they have there on non-performing loans for the registered banks in New Zealand. And on average, you have about 0.3% of the debt outstanding to banks for housing purposes would be 90 days or more in arrears. People are behind on their interest payments, etc. We're sitting at 0.4% at the moment, so above average. A year or so ago, it was 0.2%. So yes, there has been some deterioration. But if we go back to the 2 or 3 years after the global financial crisis of 2008 to 2009, we find that the ratio there was about 1.2%. So no, there is no comparison between some of the stress which is being felt out there at the moment by some people and what we have seen in the past in New Zealand, especially associated with the GFC. Now, for those people who may be, like I say, in this situation, there is the opportunity to take on board a boarder. There are extra work opportunities out there, and maybe helping explain why the numbers aren't as bad as maybe some people think they could be, is the fact that as Kiwis, we tend to fix our mortgage interest rates, usually only for 1 to 2 years, but it does give people advance warning of extra cost that is going to be coming along. And we do still have probably 30 to 40% of mortgages left yet to roll on to these higher rates, 6.5 to 7%. People have had some warning in advance, and so when you've got some warning, then there's not quite so much of a shock comes along. You can start to pull back your spending in other areas, maybe delay something you were going to do to make sure you can continue to service the mortgage. I'd love to be able to say that, well, the pain's going to disappear soon because the interest rates are going to be falling away rapidly. Well, I don't expect the Reserve Bank will be tightening monetary policy again this cycle. I expect them to ease over 2024, but in all honesty, the best you can say about when are they going to ease next year, sometime between January the 1st and December 31st, 2024. The level of uncertainty is still very strong, especially when it comes to talking about China. If China worsens, the outlook for New Zealand's exports will worsen. The outlook for our economy will get, bad basically. And so inflation will start to fall away, and the Reserve Bank will look to ease monetary policy earlier than the late 2024 period they have currently penciled in. But there's a lot of water still to go under the bridge in that regard. And I think people should reasonably assume mortgage rates coming down 2024, but don't be assuming January. Put yourself maybe towards the middle of the year for a relatively slow decline to set in there. Now, with regard to the housing market in New Zealand, I was sort of thinking earlier on, let's be slightly cheeky on this one, and let's just note that over the past year, the unemployment rate in New Zealand has gone from 3.2% to 3.6%. Doesn't really sound like the sort of thing that's going to boost your housing market there. You've had your fixed mortgage rates increase quite a bit, and over the past few months, we've had about 0.25% or more go on especially the 3 to 5 year fixed interest rates. The country's exports are spluttering out there with the weakness in China. Consumer confidence by one reading is sitting about 25% below average, so that's not very positive. And of course, it's an election year, and I can see from my monthly survey of real estate agents that concern about the election is definitely causing a lot of people to just sort of sit back and go, I'm going to see what happens. That's something dominant also in the business sector with regard to capital spending plans, etc. So it's fairly easy to look at those fundamentals and go, well, that means surely the housing market's going to be weak, but these are not normal times that we've been living through for a while. We had the definitely abnormal 46% soaring in house prices between about June of 2020 and late 2021, and then the average 18% fall. So things have been whipping around quite a bit. And now, as I've been talking about since early this year, there's a recovery underway. Seasonally adjusted, the number of dwellings being sold around the country using the REINZ data there, the numbers have improved about 16% over the past 3 months. House prices on average in Auckland are now 1.8% above their lows. In the rest of the country, they're 0.5% above their lows. So that sort of speaks to the view I've been giving for some time that it's going to be an upturn led by Auckland, along with Wellington and Christchurch this cycle, while the regions will tend to lag behind in that house sales cycle. And I'd consider that view reinforced with the weakness we see in China. But just remember, there is a strong tourism recovery underway. And so for parts of the country where tourism is a big part of their economy, there is a substantial offset, South Island especially, to the weakness coming through on the farming sector. We can see that the housing market is picking up. And as a reminder, many of the factors that have been contributing to the return of buyers to the market have been the fact that prices have gone down about 18% up until 3 or so months ago from their peaks late in 2021. So there's more affordability there. A lot of people have been holding off buying for 2.5 years, so they have increased the size of their deposits. There has actually been average wages growth exceeding inflation over the past 3.5 years. So you don't really read much about that, but wages have gone up on average 22% since the start of 2020 versus about an 18% increase in the average consumer basket cost. That doesn't include interest rates. So if you've got a mortgage out there, then your interest rates have gone up, so it's a different kettle of fish. But overall, we do have the wages growth has been fairly good. Job security has been quite good, and the number of jobs, in fact, has increased. Despite that unemployment rate going up, job numbers are now 4% higher than they were a year earlier. We've got a migration boom underway, so I think more and more people are getting aware of this one and the obvious offset it provides with all the foreigners coming in to the net loss of Kiwis the past year of about 35,000. So that number is very large. A net loss of Kiwis, 12-month period, 35,000. The average the past 2 decades is about 21,000 or so per annum. So definitely a lot of Kiwis, young, middle-aged, are heading across to Australia. But it's like every man and his dog is coming in from the rest of the world. China and India in particular, Philippines, a lot of the South Africans, a few British coming through, etc. A few other factors helping to explain why we've got this upturn in the housing market. Despite those negative fundamentals I mentioned earlier on, credit conditions have eased, so the rules for LVRs have eased slightly, and the Credit Contracts Consumer Finance Act has been tweaked for a second time. Probably some further tweaks are going to occur down the road as well. Rents are still rising out there. There's a bit of an aversion for now. This is just temporary. It'll change, I think, in a 15 to 18 month period. But there's an aversion towards new builds. A few stories out there of people losing their deposits, the cost increases for the builders, the developers, the numbers not stacking up. And so for people looking to buy, I think there's been a shift for now towards looking through the listings there. The listings, of course, are much higher than the levels back in the middle of 2021. Back then, the stock that you and I, if we were buying, that we could peruse through, was below 14,000. We're about 24,500 or so now. But I suspect there is increasing awareness of the fact that listings are falling. They're already 15% down from their peak at the end of last year. And of course, that is something which can start to motivate some of the buying going on out there. Oh, and also, of course, with the political polls suggesting an increasing probability of a change in government later on this year, then some investors are showing a little bit of interest. I personally wouldn't over-egg this one, but some interest based on potential change in the tax regime. But we've got to remember the interest rates are still at very high levels, so the numbers simply still don't stack up for a lot of investors out there. And also with an ageing population, people who have invested in residential property over the decades, there'll be an increasing prevalence of people looking to sell their asset, place their money maybe in something more accessible to finance their retirement over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years or whatever. Now, I just want to finish off by running through some numbers. I think I've done this before, given the timing of this monthly survey, monthly commentary here. Often it's happening just after I've gotten results from my monthly survey of real estate agents, which is definitely the case now. I closed off the survey there just last night, my time, and the results basically show that there is increasing strength still coming through in the real estate market. So I've got screeds of numbers I can use to illustrate this one. Basically every series that I gather there is showing it, but here's just a few of them. 3 months ago, only 2%, a net 2% of the agents were saying more people were showing up at auctions. That's about 36% now. The average is minus 13%. The auction rooms are getting busier. Something the media have paid attention to, open homes, many more people showing up there. A net 65% of the agents saying we're getting more people at open homes. 4 months ago, that was only 3% showing that, and the average is about minus 3%. So there are more people out there looking to make a purchase, perusing what's on offer. The agents are reporting that prices are rising. There's an increasing proportion of agents now seeing more first home buyers, a net 67%. That could even be a record, actually, because it is the young people who are driving this market so far, sensing an opportunity to make a purchase before other people maybe generally start moving back into the market later this year through maybe 2024, 2025. Let me just finish off by noting, I guess if I couldn't cite any series other than this limited number here, these would be ones I'd be paying attention to at the moment. For FOMO, I now have 40% of agents saying that buyers are fearful of missing out. The average is 39%. So you cannot look at my survey results there of the real estate agents and say a frenzy is in place. It most definitely is not. We are at an average level of concern by buyers that if they dilly-dally around, they're going to miss out. About 4 months ago, there was only 9% of agents seeing FOMO. So this is quite a firm development over the past 3 to 4 months. FOOP, F-O-O-P, fear of overpaying, has dropped away. So this is what kept a lot of people out of the market from the start of 2022, when it was clear that house prices were falling. People were worried, if I make a purchase, I'm going to feel silly. If prices fall further, I'm going to stand back from the market there. So 3 months ago, 49% of agents were saying, yeah, people are showing FOOP, they're worried prices will go down. That's now only 20%. The average for over 3 years is 43%. So we are now into a period of below average concerns that house prices are going to fall away. And the final numbers I'm going to give you here relate to listings. I mentioned this early on, that listings are certainly a lot higher than they were in 2021, but they're coming down, and I think people are getting aware of the listings opportunity that has been around and the way that they're falling. So on average over the past 3.5 years, 43% of the agents have said, oh, people are concerned about not enough listings. 3 or so months ago, only 25% of agents were saying that. Now it's 54%. People can see the listings starting to fall away, and this is without sales actually being yet at a particularly high level. And as I've mentioned in my written publications, I've presented research showing that as sales rise, the stack or the stock of listings goes down. Yes, some more fresh listings come forward. There are definitely some vendors holding off until after the election, but I struggle to see any great surge in listings related to sales rising when I've looked at the data since 2007. So overall, look, for the New Zealand economy, we do face some challenges here with China slowing down in particular and interest rates still at high levels. So things are going to be muted in that regard, maybe for the entirety of rest of this year through 2024. But the housing market is driven by different fundamentals, and that's what I try and concentrate on with all these lists I run through about reasons why the market has picked up and reasons why I think it's still going to be picking up over the next 18 months. Strong population growth, decrease increasing supply of new houses coming forward, decreasing number of listings, a view that interest rates have peaked, and then some actual falls coming through from next year as well, and a few other factors I tend to concentrate a wee bit more on maybe when I do the weekly video. So look, good luck to everybody out there. These are uncertain times, especially ahead of the election, and goodness knows really what the outcome is likely to be there. Trying times for some with the interest rates at relatively high levels, but do just remember the situation has been worse out there in terms of arrears, and there is this unique opportunity to either take in a boarder, there are tax advantages in doing that, or maybe pick up some extra hours of work as well. So all the best out there, everybody, and just remember that these are my views and not necessarily the views of NZHL. You've got to make your own decisions, and with my various surveys and this sort of commentary, I'm looking to provide yourselves with as much information as possible for you to make your own decision about what you do and when you do it, and maybe how you finance it, fixed, floating, or whatever. So all the best out there. Cheers.